Picture this. You're sitting in a counselor's waiting room.
Okay.
You're this young student. Your name is Sarah. And you're wearing this brown, ready-made skirt suit.
Right, the one from the January sale.
Exactly. The outfit your mom specifically hunted down.
Yeah.
Just to, save a few coins.
Yeah.
So you are simply sitting there. You're waiting for your friend Stella, totally unaware that the casual small talk you're about to have with the receptionist
Oh, man.
is going to completely unravel a massive, decades-long community scandal.
It really is wild how it starts so small.
It is. And today, we are doing a deep dive into the mechanics of how predators hide in plain sight. We're pulling from excerpts of Chapter 4 of a narrative titled Robbers of Life.
It's such a heavy but important text.
Really important. Our mission today is to break down the psychological architecture of secrecy. We're going to look at how entire communities unknowingly protect abusers and, crucially, the specific mechanisms young people use to break those cycles.
Yeah, and that waiting room scene you just mentioned, it is the absolute perfect entry point.
Why is that?
Because it captures the exact moment a predator's greatest weapon, which is isolation, finally begins to fail.
Right.
Predators completely rely on their victims believing their trauma is like a solitary, unique event. So in the text, the receptionist, Ruth Mathama, strikes up a conversation with Sarah.
And Ruth assumes Sarah is this working-class professional, right?
Yeah.
Because of the suit.
Exactly. But Sarah corrects her. She explains she is just a student prepping for her national fourth grade exams.
Wow.
And that tiny correction, that little moment of shared vulnerability, it just opens a floodgate.
Yeah.
Ruth decides to share her own life story right then and there.
And I mean, what a story it is. The text paints this devastating picture of Ruth's background. She was raised by a single mother who worked as a teacher.
Right.
And Ruth was incredibly devout. She was an active member of her church youth group, a born-again Christian.
She was doing everything right, quote unquote.
Exactly. So one day, she goes to her pastor's office just seeking spiritual guidance. She sits down, expresses her everyday worries, and as she tries to leave, he shuts the door and rapes her.
It's horrifying. And the psychology of what happens next to Ruth is a textbook study in internalized trauma.
How so?
Well, Ruth instantly recognizes the sociological trap she is in. If she tells her mother won't believe her.
Because the pastor is untouchable.
Exactly. He is the central pillar of their community's moral framework. Challenging him means challenging the entire community's sense of reality. So the trauma has nowhere external to go.
It turns inward.
It turns completely inward.
And we see that inward turn violently in the text. I mean, Ruth just spirals. She acts out against anyone showing her compassion.
Yeah, pushing everyone away.
She turns to alcohol, starts hanging around local bars with crooks, and she goes through 4 incredibly dangerous back alley abortions.
Which is just so physically tolling.
It is. It eventually leaves her bleeding out on a road after a failed operation, nearly dead. She's fundamentally punishing herself.
She really is. She's bearing the physical and psychological cost of the community's delusion. She genuinely believes she is the broken one.
Right.
But the crucial pivot happens when she tells Sarah the name of the man who did this.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because she says he used to be at their parish, but now he's been moved to Corinda Parish. And his name is John Kiandandu.
And that name changes everything.
It hits Sarah like a freight train. Because John Kiandandu is the exact same pastor who's been targeting Sarah's friends.
Yeah.
Stella, who is literally sitting just on the other side of the counselor's door at that very moment, is a victim. Another friend, Rachel, is a victim.
It's all connected.
It is. And this is where I want to pause and look at the mechanics of this realization. When Sarah hears this total stranger named the same abuser, it's like a narrative magnifying glass.
That's a great way to put it.
All these scattered hidden community secrets are suddenly focused into one blinding point of light. But I have to ask, how does hearing a stranger's story fundamentally change a victim's reality? Like, why is this the tipping point that makes Sarah realize they have to fight back?
Because it shatters the illusion of the isolated incident.
Okay.
Grooming and abuse within closed communities, they operate on this localized form of gaslighting. The abuser convinces the victim that they are uniquely flawed or, uniquely chosen.
Right, that no one else could possibly understand.
Exactly. So when Sarah connects Ruth's trauma to Stella and Rachel, the shame shifts. It is no longer a personal moral failing of these individual girls.
It becomes a pattern.
Yes. A systemic, calculated pattern of behavior by a predator. The problem moves from the private domain of personal guilt straight into the public domain of a community threat.
Sarah actually says it perfectly in the text. She says, The dirty linen was no longer personal as from then, but a public domain.
That line is so powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And once we see that pattern, the text gives us what is basically a masterclass in the abuser's playbook. We learn how Pastor John actually operates.
His whole methodology.
Yeah. We find out he actually funded Stella's abortion to keep her quiet. And Ruth mentions he is known to frequent big hotels around Corinda Parish with various young girls.
He's basically operating an entire hidden economy of dependency.
Right. And we see the specific mechanics of this economy when he attempts to groom Sarah.
Oh, this part is so manipulative.
It is. Sarah's a Sunday school teacher.
Yeah.
She arrives at the church early to set up for the kids, and the pastor makes sure he is already there, waiting in the empty building.
Setting the trap.
Exactly. He starts laying the groundwork. He tells her he wants her to replace Stella to be the most beautiful girl in church. And look at the currency he uses. The text explicitly notes he targets the teenage desire for a hustle-free life.
Which is such a specific phrase.
It really is. He offers her cash. He promises she will eat chicken every day, which in this context is a massive luxury.
Huge luxury.
He promises multiple salon visits a week, a wardrobe full of new dresses, shoes, makeup, and an expensive phone.
What's fascinating here is the economics of those bribes.
Tell me more about that.
He isn't just offering gifts. He is offering a total bypass of her current socioeconomic reality.
Right. She's a student struggling to get by.
Exactly. For a teenager facing the daunting prospect of national exams just to scrape by, the promise of a hustle-free life is incredibly intoxicating.
It's easy out.
He is trying to artificially shrink her worldview so that he becomes the sole provider of her success and, honestly, her dopamine. He wants to be the only sun in her solar system.
But Sarah rejects it. She tells him point blank she doesn't believe in free things.
He's so smart.
She is. And the moment he realizes the bribes aren't working, his mask slips completely. He throws a massive tantrum.
It's terrifying how fast he switches.
It is. He calls her a fool. He mocks the cheap brown dress her mother bought in the January sales, telling her she wears the exact same thing every Sunday.
So cruel.
He tells her she has no perfume and smells like a he-goat. I mean, it's incredibly vicious.
It is a calculated demolition of her self-esteem. If he cannot buy her compliance through aspiration, he will force it through degradation.
That makes sense.
And that insult about smelling like a he-goat, it's highly specific. It's a visceral, rural insult designed to hit her deepest physical and economic insecurities.
He's constantly reminding her of her poverty.
Exactly.
But I have to play devil's advocate here because this is the part that genuinely confused me when I was reading it.
Okay, what is it?
The sheer brazenness of his behavior is just staggering. I mean, he is throwing tantrums, hurling bizarre insults at a Sunday school teacher inside the physical church building.
Yeah, he's not exactly being subtle.
Right. If his tactics are this aggressive and this visible, how does the community not see the red flags? How does he maintain his authority?
This is where we have to understand the sociological concept of charismatic authority. It's a term originally coined by Max Weber.
Okay, break that down for us.
In certain environments, authority doesn't come from a person's actions or a set of rules. It comes from their title and the perceived divine or exceptional aura they carry.
So just being the pastor.
Yes. In this community, the title of pastor carries an unquestionable spiritual weight. The community doesn't look at his actions to determine if he is good. They look at his title, assume he is good, and then retroactively justify his actions.
Wow. So the title literally acts as a cloaking device.
Precisely. He has leveraged that charismatic authority to create a reality where his word is the baseline truth.
Right.
If a young, poor girl speaks out against a figure with that much structural power, the community's instinct is never to question the leader. Questioning the leader means questioning the entire spiritual foundation of their lives.
Which is too terrifying for them.
Exactly. Instead, it is so much easier to just question the girl.
Which brings us to how the community actually responds when the truth starts to leak out.
Yeah.
Because they don't just passively ignore it.
No, they don't.
They actively protect the predator. Let's look at Sarah's parents. The rumors about the pastor and the girls are starting to spread.
The whispers are starting.
Yeah. And Sarah's mother hears a rumor that Sarah was seen at the Corinda Hotel.
Oh, boy.
Now, the reality is, Sarah only went there to support Stella during a crisis, left quickly and met up with another friend.
She was just being a good friend.
Exactly. But the mother doesn't want context. She just sees a daughter potentially bringing shame to the family. She is furious.
The parents here represent the systemic enforcement of silence. Consider her father's reaction.
Yeah, the father gives advice that sounds practical, but is deeply avoidant.
Oh, completely avoidant.
He tells her to be wise, trust the right people, and just keep her head down and focus on her national fourth-grade exams.
And we should probably contextualize those exams for a second.
All right.
In this setting, the national exams aren't just a routine test. They are the singular, high-stakes ticket out of poverty.
Right, everything rides on them.
So the father is essentially saying, the world is dangerous, men like this exist, but your only job is to survive and secure your own economic future. Don't make waves.
Don't rock the boat.
Exactly. It is a pure survival strategy. But notice the mechanism. It places the entire burden of avoiding abuse onto the potential victim.
Wow.
It silently accepts the predator as an immovable fact of nature, like bad weather, rather than a human being who should be removed.
That is so bleak. But if you want to talk about bleak, the most heartbreaking example of community blindness involves Ruth's mother.
This part is so hard to read.
It really is. Remember, Ruth is spiraling. She is drinking, acting out. Her mother is desperate to heal her daughter's sudden, quote-unquote, filthy misbehaving.
Because she has no idea her daughter was raped.
None. So where does she go for help? She seeks spiritual intervention. She goes to Pastor Kiandandu.
The psychological weight of that interaction is just staggering.
They pray together for hours. The text describes the pastor holding a picture of Ruth, loudly rebuking the demon out of her.
It's sickening.
And the mother leaves, feeling comforted, completely unaware that the man holding her daughter's photo is the monster who destroyed her. And then the town starts whispering that Ruth has been bewitched.
This raises an important question about how abusers survive for decades. And the core mechanism is cognitive dissonance.
How does it work here?
Human brains are wired to protect themselves from worldview-shattering pain. For Ruth's mother to accept that her revered spiritual leader is a violent predator,
It would destroy her.
it would require her to dismantle her entire understanding of faith, safety, and community. The brain simply cannot hold those two conflicting truths.
But makes up a new one.
Exactly. It invents a third reality. The brain decides the teenage girl isn't traumatized, she is bewitched.
Because demons are a psychologically safer enemy than the pastor.
Spot on. The community invents these alternate narratives specifically to avoid confronting the man at the pulpit.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because what happens when that dynamic moves from the physical church pulpit to the internet?
Oh, the Facebook element?
Yes. The text introduces this fascinating modern element. The rumors finally hit Facebook. Stella, one of the victims, opens her account and is hit with like 25 notifications.
Just a barrage.
And they are all vulgar insults from community members tearing her down, protecting the pastor.
The physical architecture of secrecy scales up digitally.
Exactly. The pastor posts a status update addressing the gossip. He claims the girl spreading rumors is trying to destroy his name because she's been entered by the devil.
And look at the response he gets.
It's insane. He gets 1,000 likes, 1,000 comments calling him a good man of God. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he is secretly texting Stella, mocking her for her failed mission.
We can look at those 1,000 likes as a social proof smokescreen.
A smokescreen, I like that.
Human beings are deeply tribal, right? We are algorithmically wired to trust the consensus of the crowd. When you see 1,000 people validating a narrative, it literally short-circuits your critical thinking.
Wow.
The pastor isn't just using his spiritual authority anymore, he is weaponizing algorithmic authority.
He is literally using those 1,000 likes as a digital fortress to gaslight the victims in real time.
Exactly.
It's no longer Stella against the pastor. It is Stella against a mobilized army of 1,000 people who genuinely, in their hearts, believe they're defending a righteous man.
Which makes speaking up feel impossible.
It really does.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how do you pierce a smokescreen that thick?
You have to introduce a counter-narrative that is stronger than the abuser's illusion. And the text shows us exactly how these young women do it.
Yes, let's talk about ambition as an antidote.
It's the best part of the story.
It really is. What ultimately shielded Sarah from the pastor's grooming, it wasn't just that she was afraid of him. It was that her brain was already occupied by a much larger vision of her future.
She had bigger plans.
The text notes she was inspired by seeing the world shift for women. She visualized women driving cars, building their own houses, becoming CEOs of major companies, and winning internationally acclaimed prizes.
This is the mechanical breakdown of grooming. We talked earlier about how the pastor tried to artificially shrink her world, offering her chicken and salon visits to make himself her only source of success.
Right.
Ambition does the exact opposite. It expands her horizon infinitely. A predator cannot monopolize the future of a victim who has already visualized an independent path to the top.
It's like armor.
Her ambition made his bribes mathematically worthless to her.
I knew I would work with my two hands. That's what she says in the text. That earned independence is her armor.
And we see that same spark reignite in Ruth, too.
Yes, Ruth, who survived those back alley abortions, who finally confessed the horrific details of her trauma, which she actually refers to in the text as her banana skin to her mother.
She doesn't just heal, she weaponizes her experience.
She starts studying for the exact same national exams as Sarah. And her new goal, she wants to become a lawyer. She wants to fight for helpless girls and dismantle the system that protected her abuser.
It represents a fundamental shift in how trauma is processed. They are moving from isolated suffering to strategic execution.
I love that phrase, strategic execution.
And they aren't doing it in a vacuum either. This is where Counselor Sue's role becomes critical.
Right, because Counselor Sue is not just offering a box of tissues and a sympathetic ear. While Sarah and Stella are in her office, Sue outlines a real tactical plan.
She takes action.
She tells them she is bringing in a female lawyer to execute justice. They are preparing to file formal legal charges against the pastor for impregnating an underage girl and funding the abortion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, notice the symbolism there.
Okay, what do you mean?
Sarah dreamed of female CEOs and professionals changing the world, right? And Counselor Sue literally brings one into the room to fight the pastor. She's providing a real-world manifestation of Sarah's ambition to combat the pastor's authority.
Oh, that is brilliant. And Sue doesn't stop at legal action either.
No, she doesn't.
She sets up a meeting for that very Sunday. She plans to go to Sarah's home to sit down with her parents, to force them to look at the truth. Sue says, "We cannot work in darkness."
She is systematically dismantling the architecture of secrecy we talked about at the beginning.
Exactly.
That is the ultimate takeaway of this text. Predators build their power by isolating victims in the dark and relying on the community's cognitive dissonance to maintain that darkness.
So the only way out is light.
The only way to break it is through collective, illuminated action. You have the counselor providing the institutional strategy, the aspiring lawyer turning trauma into legal fuel, and the peers refusing to let each other be isolated.
They become a team.
The abuser's power requires them to stay apart. Their victory is mathematically guaranteed the moment they combine forces.
So what does this all mean? If you've ever watched a beloved community figure, a celebrity, or a politician get exposed, you might have wondered why no one spoke up sooner.
We see it all the time.
Every single day. What Pastor John does in this text is the exact same playbook used in the real world. Trust is a heavy currency, and it is easily weaponized by people who understand how to manipulate social proof and charismatic authority.
But education, critical thinking, and a rock-solid vision of your own independence can break that manipulation.
It demands that we look critically at our own environments. When we understand the mechanics of how communities protect abusers, not out of malice, but out of a desperate psychological need to maintain their own comfort, we become much better equipped to spot the red flags.
Absolutely.
I want to leave you with a thought to turn over in your mind today. Think back to that Facebook post we talked about.
The 1,000 likes.
Picture the pastor's 1,000 likes from people who genuinely believe they were doing the right thing, protecting a good man from the devil's gossip. It forces you to look at your own digital circles, your own community, and ask, how often does charisma perfectly mask corruption?
It's a tough question.
And what inconvenient, painful truth might be hiding right behind 1,000 likes on your own feed?
Such a sobering reality to consider.
Especially when you realize that dismantling a massive, corrupt social fortress doesn't always start with a grand battle. Sometimes it starts with a quiet, honest conversation between two strangers in a waiting room, with one of them wearing a brown, ready-made skirt suit bought in the January sales.